Hello and welcome back to Modern Jazz Pianist. Now in this module we're going to talk about the jazz pianist code. Now what is our code? A code is our concept or a way of life, certain rules, principles that help us to understand as we go into our journey. So I'm going to make this real simple. We're going to talk about basically I'm going to give you 5 keywords, and we're going to talk about them as concepts, okay? So these basic 5 concepts, or the basic 5 codes of being a jazz pianist, because the piano doesn't do anything. It doesn't become a jazz piano. We become jazz musicians, and what that means is that we're playing from our spirit. So we want to be able to improvise, and we want to be able to connect with the language of this music and the tradition. Okay, so of course the history is very important, but now we're talking about real life applications. So I kind of want to make it simple for us. So I broke it down into 5 basic codes. Okay, so this is the jazz pianist code. So basically we have harmony. Harmony is very important. Now harmony, I'm not talking about harmony just C major 7th, that type of harmony. Okay, harmony for us, because the piano represents it has all the notes. It comes from the percussion family, but it actually is a whole orchestra. So either if you're accompanying yourself or you're accompanying other people, harmony is just the concept of getting along. And as piano players, that is really one of our key strengths in our roles. So harmony is kind of a way of life, So harmony is a very important part of our code. So that would be the first one, okay? And then we have attitude, all right? Your attitude, all right? Your attitude. The piano is really an accompaniment instrument. Even if you're playing solo piano, you have to accompany yourself. So accompaniment is 90% attitude. Jazz piano is like 90% attitude, and 10% is going to be everything else that you learn, all the technical things. But your attitude is so important to build your foundation of how you're going to play, okay? And like I said, harmony is one of the codes, one of the important things that we live by. So your attitude. So when you play with other people, what is your attitude? What is your attitude accompanying other people? Because we control harmony. Okay, we control harmony. We could play a chord and harmonize everything, or we could not play at all. Or we could screw up everything by not being in sync and just add dissonance. But we'll get into all of this because there's a code to all of that. Okay, so your attitude is very important. When I was a younger musician, I used to, I started playing with a lot of people, and I was playing with Jackie, and my accompaniment, he was like, well, work on your accompaniment. I said, well, what can help me with that, He said, we'll talk to some of the accompaniment great accompanists. And so I contacted Larry Willis, and he told me, it's 90% attitude is your accompaniment. It's your attitude. And it really makes sense, because we learn all these technical things, but to apply them, we want to have the right attitude, okay? So attitude is very, very, very important, okay? So also staying in the moment. You want to stay in the moment, okay? Because this music is always moving, okay? So you want to stay in the moment. We don't want any mistakes. We don't want any regrets, because we don't have time to recognize them. You can actually turn a mistake into an embellishment if you don't panic, okay? So understand that this music is always changing and it's always evolving. It's never going to be the same way. So your attitude is, you have to be very sensitive and flexible. So attitude is very important, and staying in the moment. Now also very important is your 3 stages of practice. Now, practice is very important. And these three stages are going to be analyze, you're going to understand, and then you're going to submit. Okay, so we want to analyze this music. So if you take a new piece, you want to understand everything about it, not just play it, not just sight read it. Analyzing is understanding what's going on, what is the progression, how is these melody notes, why is the melody, why is these notes landing where they are. All of that is part of analyzing the theory of it. Now, once you understand the song, you know the melody, you know the chord changes, and you know what the song is about. You have an interpretation of the song is about. Then you understand it. You understand it. Now, when you're understanding, we want to now start to play the song. All right. So you're moving from analyzation, which is your conscious. You're very conscious. All right. And then we want to get to our subconscious mind, which is the level of submission. So you have analyze, understand, submit. Simple. Okay, so you understand the music. Once you understand it, now you can start to play it. Now, you're playing it, add time to it, but you have to try to push towards your subconscious mind, all right? And our conscious mind and our subconscious mind are always there, okay? So we want to submit to the music, okay? Because you're always in control. Even in your subconscious mind, you're in control. But you want to submit to the music, okay? So it's a process. Some people can just go right there right away, and we want to get there, okay? But these are the three stages, okay? So even if you learn a new song, everyone has to go through those three stages. Some people just can go quicker. They can analyze the music quick, understand it quick, and they can get right to submitting to the music and staying in the moment. Staying in the moment is so important because, like I said, the music is changing. It's constantly moving, constantly changing, and you have to adapt. It's like life, okay? So we want to be able to stay in the moment, and we want to harmonize with our environment, all right? And this is a daily practice, okay? And we want to be able, when we practice, we want to be able to quickly, as quick as possible, analyze, understand the music, and then you have to practice submitting. The key thing about submission is rhythm, rhythm. Once the rhythm comes in, then you have to fall in time, okay? So I just want to point out some of these very important jazz piano codes, okay? Attitude, all right, your attitude and your harmony, attitude, staying in the moment, the three stages of practice, and probably one of the most important is you want to grow elephant ears and you want to grow elephant skin. Now, what that means is that, the elephant has very good hearing, okay? So you want to hear better than anyone. You want to be able to hear intuitively, okay? And you understand, if you live by these codes of living in a harmonic life, of not trying to dissonance with somebody that might hit a note or say something to you, you want to have elephant skin so it doesn't affect you. When you get out here and you play in the professional world, music is a very, very competitive field. And if you go to jam sessions, a lot of situations might be unkind. So you want to be confident in your hearing, okay, and grow elephant skin. Then you're pretty much invincible in the external, when you play with other musicians, because you're hearing internally, and if something doesn't go right and something, a lot of times the first person they look back is the piano player, right? So you want to have that elephant skin so that you can take the shots. You can take these hits, because I'm telling you, being a musician and being a so-called working musician, a jazz musician, so-called jazz musician, it's a pretty thankless sometimes, So you have to grow elephant skin, and you get that from the love of this music. If you understand this music is a music from the spirit, and it's always been fighting its environment. Now we have, jazz is pretty much an accepted world music. But if you look at the root of it, the spirit of it is is an answer to this environment, to its environment where it comes from. And we talked about that in history. It's always a spirit of freedom of expression and against greed and racism. Okay? So you want to live past that. You can't have greed and racism and be harmonizing with everybody, you see? So these are principles. This is the code. And of course, you could probably add some more things that are more personal to you. But I just wanted to break it down to these 5 simple things, okay? So your harmony. And I'm not talking about, your chords. I'm talking about your life and how we live. Because it's going to come out in your playing. The piano players, a lot of times we become very intelligent because we can learn all this harmony and stuff. But we want to have a good heart. And we want to be able to have the right attitude, which is the second code, all right? The attitude, your attitude. What is your attitude when you play with others? What is your attitude? Because we're a company. So if you're playing with somebody, you want to make them, but your attitude going into it has to be about harmony, okay? So they go together. So your attitude is 90% of the actual application of the music to let the magic happen, okay? All right, then we talked about the 3 stages of practice. Very important, the 3 stages of practice. We all have to practice. But how are you going to practice? We don't want to just play. This music is never going to be the same. So even if you're reading some sheet music, start to analyze it and understand it as quick as possible and then submit. Because there's no wrong notes. Okay, we erase the wrong notes. Okay, and that's part of staying in the moment, which is the next code. You always want to stay in the moment, but once you practice these 3 stages of practice and you can get to submission level, staying in the moment is just keeping that concentration on the moment and not being distracted and controlling your emotions and submitting to the music, okay? And so those will be the 3 stages of practice and staying in the moment. If you hit a mistake, it's no such thing. It's a mistake when you recognize it as a mistake. And that second that you recognize a mistake, yeah, it's a mistake. It becomes a mistake in reality. And not only that, once you recognize it, everybody else is going to recognize it, you see. So the code is no mistakes. Okay, no mistakes. And no regrets. No regrets. There's a million moments in music. Don't try to fit all your licks or all your ideas in one little space, because the music is moving in time. So no regrets, no mistakes, stay in the moment. And lastly, but of course not leastly, you have to grow elephant skin. You have to be tough as an elephant, and you have to grow ears like an elephant, okay? And that comes from listening. And you're listening and you're being sensitive, but at the same time, you have to have tough skin to make it as in the long run, especially as a professional musician. But the music itself is going to test you. So just to keep the practice, and you have to tell yourself, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get to my subconscious mind. The magic's going to happen for me, and it will. Okay, so that's part of being tough like an elephant, okay? So I just want to go over some of these jazz pianist code before we get to the piano. And you might want to look over this. I put it in your notes, and you might want to put it on, post it on a postie, post it somewhere where you can see it. So you can start to understand what harmony, when we talk about harmony, what it is. What is your attitude about playing this music? How do you practice? What is your attitude? What are you trying to achieve when you're practicing? We're trying to get to our subconscious mind. And we want to analyze and understand the music as quick as possible. You want to stay in the moment. We have to stay in the current moment. There's no mistakes. There's no regrets. If you're staying in the moment, there's going to be another chance, another opportunity to say what you need to say. Okay? So don't worry if you didn't get it right. You'll get another chance, okay? And so it's the music is in charge all the time, okay? And it's always moving, okay? So you want to stay fluid, okay? And like I said, you got to grow those big ears and be tough. You have to be tougher than anybody, okay? as piano players, okay? But we're the most sensitive, and that's why we have to have a shield, you know, to survive in music, okay? All right, so this is a little bit of advice as we go into this regimen of becoming this modern jazz pianist, which is a cross-country journey. Okay, so I'm looking forward to see you at the piano in the next modules. We're going to get down to the rehearsal and actually get into the scales and the theory and the exciting parts of this course. But keep these jazz pianist code in mind and start to meditate on some of these philosophies and some of these concepts and add your own too. All right, so thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module.